Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome again to my class, Journalistic Writing. Today in this class, we'll talk about reported speech, which is commonly known as direct and indirect speeches. I mean, if we want to quote, somebody, then how to quote it? We can, of course, quote it directly, in the inverted commas, or we can quote people indirectly as a, remark quoted by, third person. But before I, start discussing reported speech with you, I would like to talk about just a few words on sentence purposes. In our last class, if you remember, we were talking about, sentence types with respect to its structure and its purpose. And we finished last, class at sentence type by, its structure. And you studied, 4 types of sentences, simple, complex, compound, and compound-complex. Just a few words on sentence types. What purposes, sentences serve? Sentences serve different purposes. You can use them to make statements. You can use them to issue requests, commands. You can use them to express, your abrupt feelings or desires. And also you can use them to make, questions. All these 4 purposes, if technically we speak, they are called, if I speak them, one by one, statements. If sentences express, we call them declarative sentences. When I say, I like you, you like me, today is Sunday, for example, or if I say, it's a nice classroom, he's such a lovely person, he's a nice teacher, you are wonderful students. So all these are actually statements, and we call them declarative sentences. Then we have imperative sentences. Imperatives are what? When we, we use sentences to order someone or command somebody, like sit down, stand up, go out, come in, all these sentences which, of course, express commands, orders, or even you can use them to, make requests, for example. The third category would be using sentences to make questions. Like you can use open questions, you can use closed questions, of course. Both will be interrogative, sentences. For example, do I know you? Now, this is what? It's a yes-no, question. Or if I say, what's your name? This is what? This is open question. And of course, you would, of course, answer. So, third purpose of sentence is to use it for making, questions. And the last one is we call exclamations or exclamatory sentences. We use these to express our sudden, feelings, abrupt responses, like could be expressions of anger, could be expressions of sorrow, could be expressions of, joyousness, could be, expressions of grief or relief. These we call as exclamatory sentences. So total, purposes which, sentences, serve, they are, number one, if I repeat for you, declarative for statements. Number 2, imperatives for requests and commands. Number 3, interrogatives for questions. And number 4, exclamations or exclamatory sentences for, abrupt feelings. Let's take a look, for some examples of these. The first one is, love your neighbor. Now, this sentence is neither, statement, nor a question. It's sort of imperative sentence, sort of like kind of instruction, you are giving somebody, advice you're giving somebody, love your neighbor. If you see the second one, I want to wash the flag, not burn it. Now here, you feel that it's not a declarative or a statement, rather more of your feeling, your some expression, straight away coming out of you, that I want to wash the flag, not burn it. And the third one, if you see, the echo always has the last word. Now, this sentence is what? This is a statement. So, therefore, it's declarative. And the last one are second thoughts, always wisest. Now, this is, of course, a question, of course, yes or no question. So, you see, these are the four, purposes which sentences serve. And why I'm telling you this? Look here. A very simple self-analysis. I mean, just open up your notebook, where someday you wrote a small paragraph or an essay or, anything about, could be like, your own self-expression of what you did, or even just open your diary or your journal, like, which you maintain every day, and see, like, whatever you've written. Just select a paragraph and now analyze that. See the, sentence purposes. To your wonder, you would, generally speaking, you would see that most of your sentences are in declarative nature. I mean, mostly students, what they do is actually, the sentences are of monotype. I mean, all of the sentences in a paragraph of, let's say, 4 or 5 sentences, all of them are statements. You don't find, questions. You don't find, let's say, exclamations. You don't find, imperatives, only declaratives. There you actually introduce monotony to your, expression. So I would advise you rather that you try all the 4, sentences, in your paragraphs. Of course, major portion of your, sentences, of course, will go to the declaratives, but it's always nice to, ask your readers questions just to bring their attention back to your reading. And also, like, kind of give them, brain teasers by asking them, questions. You can also express to sound very, natural. You can use exclamations also in your writings. You can, express some, some expressions, for example. Surprise, then, you can, of course, use some expressions to make your reader, understand that, it's something really, really surprising or something really, really shocking. So this is how very natural elements, you can introduce. You can also, like, give some imperative constructions to your writing. So this is how the variety you introduce. Not just by sentence structures you introduce variety. Not just by, variety of words, like, you are introducing variety, different types of words. Also by introducing different, sentence purposes. And this is how you, make your reading something really, really interesting for your readers. So next time when whenever, like, you go about writing, ask yourself that out of how many sentences are declarative, are exclamative, or imperative, or interrogative. Of course, a good mixture of all these 4 will make your, writing interesting, crisp also. Let's now come back to our today's actual topic, which is reported speech. We call it direct and indirect, speeches. If you want to quote someone's words, for example, there are 2 ways. One way is direct way, and second one is indirect way. And of course, if there are 2 or 3 speakers, or if there are 2 or 3 his lines, what you do is actually each and every line goes into a new paragraph. This is how the direct, method, you choose, which we call as direct speech. For example, if the very famous line of Jinnah, work, work, and work, if you want to quote it directly, of course, in commas, you'll use Jinnah's, words. There is another way, which we call indirect way, or indirect speech. What is that? Of course, that is kind of like remarks of the speaker reported by you or by me or any third person. For example, when I say Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah said that work, work, and work. So if that is the case, for example, then Jinnah's words, of course, are not going to be in exactness actually, but will be reported, by a third person. This is called indirect, speech. There are different, changes which occur when we change, speech from its direct to indirect form. There'll be different, changes. For example, pronouns will change. For example, verbs will change, For example, time signifiers will change. Before we discuss these three elements, I would like you to take a look of direct and indirect speech, an example I'm going to present before you, so that you can have an idea how direct speech goes in our writing and how indirect goes, and what changes, we bring about to, switch from direct to indirect. Please take a look on your screen. On your left, you have, when the inquiry was set up last year, the government was prompted by both national and local motives. Now, this sentence is direct speech. If you see the next one, which is going to be indirect speech, there you will find verbs changed. There you'll find, pronouns, if any, changed. And, time signifiers change. You can call them adjectives and adverbs. Indirect speech is, the speaker said that when the inquiry had been set up. Take a look. In direct speech, our verb was set up, and we changed it into had been set up in the preceding year. Not last year now, the preceding year. The time signifier is changed. The preceding year, the government had been prompted by. In the direct speech, it was prompted by, and now had been prompted by both national and local motives. Okay, let's now see the rules for changing, direct into indirect speech. As I mentioned before, we are going to change pronouns. Which pronouns will change? Of course, the pronouns which are going to be in the reported speech. Inside the commas. Verbs will also change, of course, inside the commas. And time, signifiers will change, which, of course, again, are inside the commas. Of course, we'll start, first of all, from the pronoun, and the pronoun, changes. But before I, go into it, let me tell you one very important thing. The verb which is outside the comma, like when we say, he said, I love you. Now, this outside the comma, he said. Now, this said thing is, very important. We call this verb as reporting verb. Then, of course, there are verbs inside the commas also, which we call them, as reported verbs. Reporting verbs and reported verbs. Now, this reporting verb, plays an important part. What role it plays? It decides what will happen to the verbs inside the commas. What I'm trying to say is that outer verb, if it's in the form of present simple, for example, or present perfect, for example, or present, future simple, for example. He says, or he has said, or he will say. Now, these are three different forms of the reporting verb. I really need your attention here. As I said, the reporting verb, if it's in simple present form, he says. If it's in present perfect form, he has said. Or if it's in future, simple future, for example, he will say. Now, if that is the case, then inside the comma, the reported verb, we are going to retain it. We are not going to change it. Is it clear? If outside of the comma, in reporting verb, simple present, simple future, and present perfect, if that is the case outside the comma, in reporting verb, inside the comma, verb will be retained. It will not be changed. We're not going to change verb inside. Of course, pronouns will change. Time signifiers will change. But verb will not change. If outside, present simple, future simple, present perfect. I'm telling you again and again, this is something very important to keep in mind. Now, from here we can conclude that when we go from direct to indirect, it means outside the comma, in reporting form, the verb has to be in past form. For example, he said. Then, of course, everything inside the commas, everything in reported, speech will be changed. I mean, pronouns will be changed, verbs will be changed, and time signifiers, will be changed. This point, please keep in mind. Okay. Let's start from the pronoun and the pronoun changes. Of course, you have studied in your last classes what are pronouns and what are the, different forms. Today, I'll only refresh three, important forms of pronouns: subject pronoun, possessive pronoun, and object pronoun. I mean, first person pronoun, if we count like I and we, I is subject pronoun, my is possessive, and me is object pronoun. Exactly the same way, we, our, us. Our is possessive pronoun, and us is object pronoun. And then second person, you. Its possessive form will be your, and object form will be you. You, your, you. Third person, he, and then possessive his, object him. She, possessive her, and object also her. It, possessive its, and object it. And they, possessive their, and object them. Now, these are three very important forms of, pronouns, which are going to play an important role in indirect speeches. Of course, we're going to change them. Now, the question is, how these, forms change. I'm going to give you a very simple method, which you keep in mind and change accordingly. Look, we are talking about inside the commas. I'm using inside the commas just to, be very straightforward and frank with you. Of course, the reported part, which you're going to change. He said, comma, inverted comma starts, I love you, comma ends. Now, I love you, of course, is going to change. Three things: pronoun, verb, and, time signifier is going to change. Now, how the pronouns in the reported speech will change. Look, first person, if there is any first person pronoun inside, it will be changed according to the subject of the reporting speech. Now, you have two things. Please keep in mind. First one, this one is reporting speech. He said. This one is reported speech. I love you. He said, I love you. Now, reporting and reported. Now, this inside, if there is first person, it is going to be changed according to the subject of the reporting speech. If there is second, person pronoun in the reported speech, it will be changed by the object. For example, he asked me. If that is the reporting part, he asked me. Now, this one, he is what? Subject. Me is object. Fine. Inside, I love you. Now, I is first person pronoun. You is what? Second person pronoun. Now, these two will be changed. First person pronoun will be changed by the subject. Second person pronoun will be changed by the object. This is how we'll change it. If there is any third person pronoun, for example, he, she, it, or they, we are not going to change them. Now, that is the pronoun change. I hope you understand. Let's now move towards the second important change, which we say verb change. Please keep in mind, reported verb will be one step. This is important thing. Reported verb will be one step back into the, past as compared to the original one. I mean to say, this is something important, I repeat, reported verb will be one step back into the past as compared to its original form. For example, let's say the verb is in the form of present simple. Let's say, let's say, sing, for example. It will be changed into sang. Present form into past form, sang. And if there is verb in the form of sang, for example, past form, it will be changed into past perfect form. Had sung, for example. If it's see, the verb will be into saw. Inside the commas, if the verb is in present form, it will be changed into past form. See into saw. If it's saw over there, past form, it will be changed into had seen. And in the same way, if there is an is-mr inside, they will go into was-in-were. If there is any was-in-were, going to change into had been. Will and shall will be in would and should. Can and may will be into could and, might. Be will be into were. So this is how verbs are going to change. This is what actually I meant when I said that reported verb will be one step back into the past than the original verb. See, this is what actually saying. See into saw, then saw into had seen. And was seeing will be into had been. And is-mr into was-in-were. And, can into could and, will into would and shall into should. So we are going actually a step back into the past. Okay, this will happen. And the third, change, what's that? That is, time signifiers. The whole concept is actually what? Let's say A and B both are talking with each other. Then, B reports whatever they talk with each other to C. So, as pronouns change, verbs change, time signifiers also change. Present then will be, of course, today will be that day, for example. Because if you, again, use the same today, then, of course, it will be what? It will be, not correct information. So, what time signifiers will change? This will be into that, and these will be into those. No will be into then. Today will be into that day. Yesterday will be into, the previous day. Tomorrow will be the next day. So these are some, time signifiers which will also change. So this is how the three changes, will occur. I repeat, the first change will be you're going to change the pronouns. Number two, you're going to change the verbs accordingly. And number three, you're going to change the time signifiers. Now let's take a look of some examples, where you would see all these, three changes occurring. Like in front of you, you can see the pronoun change. Like the first sentence says, he said, I like you. Now in the second sentence, you would see, he told me that he liked me. Now, I would like to explain you briefly. He said, I like you. Now, I is what? I is your first person. It should be changed according to the subject, and subject is he. So, I is changed into he. He told me that he liked me. And you is what? Second person. It should be changed according to the object. And object is me. So, the sentence goes this way. He told me that he liked me. You can see the second sentence also. He said, I'll accept your offer. And indirect speech with changes. He told me that he, I into he, would accept my, not your now, because object is me. So, your is second person pronoun in possessive form. Your will be changed into my, because my is also the possessive form of I. So, he told me that he would accept my offer. So, this is what actually pronoun change. Now, let's see some verb changes also. That verbs are going to change, in this pattern. If there is see as present, it becomes saw as past. Saw will become had seen. Is seen will become was seen. And same way, am, or are will, of course, into, accordingly, was and were. Has seen into had seen. And was seeing into had been seen. And shall and will would be, should and would. Be into were. And can and may into could and might. Now, let me give you one example of their verb change. You can see, in many parts of the country, farmers who were formerly plowing nearly all their land now have most of it under grass. This is direct speech. What you're going to do now in it, of course, pronouns you have seen, yourself, that how they change. And now I'll be focusing on the verbs. Take a look at the sentence. The verbs who were formally, so the use of were actually. And then the second verb in the reported speech is now have, were and have. Now these two verbs are going to be changed. In the indirect speech, with changes it goes, he said that in many parts of the country, farmers who had formerly, now previously it was were, and were changed into had formerly been plowing nearly all their land, then had most of it under grass. Second verb, which was have, changed into had. So these, two changes, were into had been and have into had changes. The third change, which is time signifier, change, let's take a look of that. This becomes that, these becomes those, here becomes there, now becomes then, today becomes that day, yesterday, preceding day or previous day, tomorrow becomes next day or following day. Okay, now again, I'll take you back to that point where I talked about that if in the reporting, speech, the verb is in present simple form or future simple form or in present perfect form, then inside the reported speech, we are going to retain the verb. Here, I would like to, show you some examples so that, you could really understand what actually I mean by retaining the verb. If you see an example on your screen, he says, I am ready. Now, the sentence is, he says, I am ready. Now, this he says can be he will say or he has said, I am ready. In all the three forms, inside the reported speech, verb is not going to be changed. Remaining everything will change. I mean to say, pronouns will change, time signifiers will change, but the verb will remain the same. Like he says, I'm ready will be he says that he is ready. Now, SMR, it's in present simple form verb that is retained, but of course pronoun changed. He says, I'm ready. He says that he is ready. Or he will say that he is ready. Or he has said that he is ready. Verb retained. Verb not changed. Number one. Number two, very important thing, if we are talking about some absolute truths, for example, gospel truths, for example, or some facts and figures, for example, or factual statements. They may not be, scientific facts and figures, but they may be factual, statements. What to do with those? Very simple thing. Verb has to be retained inside the reported speech. I mean, we are, of course, going to change pronoun in that case. We are going to change time signifiers in that case, but we will not change the verb inside. Verb inside will remain the same. For example, the teacher said, or the teacher says. Now, inside whatever comes, pronouns accordingly, time signifiers accordingly, verb same. Now, let's say teacher said was, phrasal verbs are very important. So the teacher said that phrasal verbs are very important. Now, we cannot say this where the teacher said that the phrasal verbs were very important. No. This one is a factual statement, said by somebody's statement. Then, you can change pronouns, no problem. You can change signifiers, that's also no problem. But as far as verb is concerned, don't change. Same way, if there are some absolute truths, like 2 plus 2, makes 4, or if you freeze water, it becomes solid. Or if you add hydrogen and oxygen, you get water. whatever like, are the absolute truths, what's going to happen? The verb will be same. That will not be changed. We are going to retain our verb, change the pronouns, change the, time signifiers, I mean to say adjectives and adverbs, change the way I like, mentioned with the help of some slides, but retain, your verb. This is something very important. I hope you understand now how to change, simple sentences, not interrogative, I mean to say. Simple sentences, how to change them into, the direct nature into indirect nature. I know that this reported speech always, creates troubles for, everybody, I mean. But a little practice, of course, will, clear your concepts. And then a little more practice, of course, will, like, make the things to the T for you, okay? Of course, you can use my handouts also to make your concepts, further clear. Now, let's move towards interrogative sentences, how to change them, from direct into indirect. Look, we have two types of questions. We call them closed questions and we call them open questions. What are closed questions? Closed questions are, which are yes and no questions. For example, if I say, are you a student? Are you married? If I say, is he your brother? Is he your sister? So, all, these questions, we call them closed questions. Why? Because you don't need any explanations to give. Simply you need to say yes or no. Even you can just like, move your head. Yes or no. Don't speak that. Just move. And answer, of course, will be there. Then you have open questions. What are open questions? They are WH questions. There, of course, you need some explanations, actually. Like, what's your name? Now, you cannot move your head only. With the help of your body language, you can answer. You got to speak, Where are you from? How do you feel? What have you learned? So, all these questions, WH, they are open questions. And then, of course, you can make questions with the help of helping, we call them, models, like can, could, and will, would, and shall, should, and may, might, and, must. These are models. So, in your previous classes, you studied that verbs, of course, they are of different types, actually. But three are very important, with respect to direct and indirect speeches. Let's, in a particular order, name them. Number one, I would say auxiliary verb. For example, making questions with the help of SMR, was and were, has and have, or, do and did and does with auxiliary verbs. Number two, making questions with the help of WH stuff, like who, what, when, where, why, and how, with these, 6 WH things. And number three, making questions with the help of models like will and shall and can and could. Now, these three types of questions have three different treatments when we change them from direct to indirect speech. You would see, like in simple sentences, we would always introduce the word that, like he said that he was very happy. In here, situation is totally different. At the place of that, you would see with some questions, we are not going to use nothing. No that, no any extra word to, put these two, reporting and reported together. At places, we'll be using some introducers, for example, if or whether. And at places, again, as I said before, nothing to, like, put two together straight away, like, starting with the same model thing. Now, let's discuss these, three one by one. If the question to be changed from direct into indirect is auxiliary verb question, for example, like question statements, you know, with the help of is, am, are, or was and were, what to do. If that is the question, at the place of that where we, you know, in simple sentences, the place where we would use that, there we'll use if or whether. Let me explain you this with the help of one simple example. Let's say our direct speech is, he said, are you ready? Now, in this sentence, of course, bring in your mind all the changes which we discussed for simple sentences. Verb's going to change. If you take a look at the verb of the direct speech, he said, are you? The use of is, am, are. Of course, is, am, are, you know, going to change into what? Was and were. And then, are you? You is a pronoun. What its type, if I ask you? Is it a first person or second? Of course, second, you know, person pronoun, you. And it's in subject form. If you see the outside, how it's going to change, the formula is second person pronoun is going to, you know, be changed according to the object of the reporting speech. So he said, so let's say he asked me, so outside is, you know, me thing, so you will be changed according to this I, you know, my or me. So these two changes are there. The third change is, like in simple sentences, we used to, you know, make this way, he told me that, but in questions, we are now going to use the word told, we'll be using ask. So he asked me, and the verbs inside will be is, am, are into was and were. You into, according to the object is me, so it will be I. What more changes? In simple, we used to use that actually. But here in auxiliary, you know, verb interrogatives, like is, am, are interrogatives, we are now going to use that actually. We'll be using if or whether. Now, the sentence goes this way. He asked me if, not that, if now. After if, we are going to copy, not exactly what is the, you know, reported speech. After if, was I ready? No. The sentence, I mean, the structure of the sentence will be from interrogative to simple. When I say simple, means subject first and verb second. Then our sentence goes, he asked me if I was ready. So this is how we change, you know, auxiliary verb interrogatives into indirect speech. We change verbs same way, we change pronouns same way. We don't use the word told, rather we introduce ask. And for auxiliary is, am, are, was and verb, you know, verbs, we are using if or whether. And after using if or whether, we'll be then, you know, changing our simple, I mean, our interrogative structure into simple structure. Subject coming first and verb coming second, as you have seen. He asked me if I, subject, verb, you know, which is what? Was, and then, you know, ready. So this is how our simple, you know, auxiliary verb interrogatives, you know, change into indirect speeches. One more example I would like to show you with the help of one slide. If you take a look on your screen, our direct speech is, Hassan asked, where did you go last weekend? Now, this is, as I mentioned before, this do, did, does, is, am, are, was and were, these are all auxiliary, you know, verb interrogative sentences. And of course, they take if or whether. Okay, take a look on your screen. She asked, do you want to come with me? Now, this is again auxiliary verb interrogative question. Do, does, or did, is, am, are, and was and were. And of course, they'll take what? If or whether. Take a look. She asked, do you want to come with me? And what we are doing, she asked me if. Not using that, we're using if. And then you is a second person pronoun, changed according to the object. Object is me, so I is there. If I wanted, want, present verb changed into past verb, wanted to come with her. Now this me is changed into her. Why? Because me is first person pronoun changed according to the subject of the reporting speech, and subject of the reporting speech is she. Sentence goes full. She asked me if I wanted to come with her. Dear students, this is how, we change auxiliary verb interrogatives into, indirect speeches with the help of if or whether at the place of that. And after if or whether, the pattern of the sentence will be simple, not interrogative, means subject should come first and verb. Of course, with the same changes, which we've discussed. Let's quickly move towards our second, interrogative, which is what? WH interrogative. Now here, very interesting thing is that we are not going to use any introducer like we used in the case of auxiliary, if or whether. What? Straight away, we'll link the both with the help of same WH. Like if the sentence says, who are you, for example. So we are not going to use that. I mean, he said, who are you? No. To link these two, we're not going to use that. We're not going to use if or whether. Very simple. We'll remove the commas and put the two together with who. And, of course, verb will be accordingly changed. Time, signifiers will be accordingly changed. Pronouns, will be accordingly, changed. Let's take a look, to understand how WH, questions go into indirect speeches. On your screen, you have Hassan asked, where did you go last weekend? Now, this is where, which denotes place, actually. And as I said before, no if, no whether, no that. Simple starting from where. You can see Hassan asked me where, and just like auxiliary verb interrogatives after if and whether, we used to change our sentences into simple patterns, subject coming first, verb coming second. Exactly the same way in WH interrogatives also. After we change into indirect speech, after WH, pattern of the sentence will be subject first, verb second, no matter what. Take a look. Where I had gone, not where had I gone, rather where I had gone the previous weekend. The time signifiers also changed. Now, let's move to our third type of interrogative, which is models. Making interrogative sentences with the help of models, like can, could, may, might, shall, should, and will, would. What we do? Very simple. The way WH we make, exactly the same way. No introducer, no that, no if, no whether. Very simple. Remove commas, put these two together, and, verb changes accordingly, time signifiers accordingly, pronouns accordingly. On your screen, again, there's an example. Will he come? Changed into he asked, would he come? Look, in this sentence, he said, will he come? Okay, what we did, he asked. After asked, no that, no if, no whether. He asked. Will is going to be changed into would. So would is there. He asked, would. And then he come. So these are three types of interrogatives from direct into indirect, speeches. Now, two things we have studied about, indirect speeches. Changing simple sentences into, indirect. Direct speeches to indirect. And number two, changing, three different types of questions from direct into indirect. And in all three, you have seen the major changes are three. Verbs are changing. They are being changed. Time signifiers are being changed. Pronouns are being changed. Plus, in case of auxiliary verb questions, at the place of that, we use if or whether. Otherwise, with WH questions, we don't use any introducer. We just remove commas and put two together. And in the case of modal interrogatives like will and would, what we do, very simply, remove commas, put the two together, no introducer. Now, let's move towards next category where we'll talk about how to change commands, orders into indirect, speeches. On your screen, you can see, give all the help you can. Now, this one is what? This is instructive sentence, imperative sentence, starting with the verb give, and its change into indirect will be, he asked that they should give all the help they could. So, the command or the instruction, we are using the word should. You can also use ought to, makes no difference. You can use should or you can use ought to. And if you go back to your screen, there is another possibility. He asked them to give all the help they could. And the second example you have seen that now we are not using should or ought to. What we are doing actually, you're using imperative verb. Infinitive, verb. To plus verb. He asked them to give all the help they could. And there is one more possibility. What is that? Very straightforward. Let them give all the help they could. Now, these are three possibilities. Number one, the use of should or ought to. This is number one. Number two, you can use infinitive verb, which is to plus verb. And number three, you can use let. Let them give all the help they could. Of course, verb changes will be, according to the same rules. Pronoun changes will be according to the same rules. The last of the day towards, reported speech is changing exclamations. Changing exclamations into indirect speeches. Now, exclamations are what? Of course, I told you before that these are abrupt, reactions to situations. They are your desires. They are your feelings, They are your sudden, responses actually. Of course, to your environment, to your different situations. How we change them? Take a look on your screen. Like the example is, hooray, we have won the match. Now, this change into indirect is, they exclaimed with joy. Now, the expression of this excitement, this enjoyment is expressed, they exclaimed with joy. Then the use of that, they had won the match. Have is changed into had. Okay, now I would like to recapitulate what we have studied today. Reported speech, when we quote, other person's words into third person, So, of course, we use reported indirect speeches or reported, speeches. Three major changes we have seen today, they occur, we introduce to our sentences. Inside the commas, we change pronouns. How we change pronouns? Inside the commas, first person according to the subject of the reporting. Second person, pronoun I'm talking about according to the object of the reporting part. And third person will not, change. And second change we have seen that verbs, they change, they are into, a step back into past, present into past, like see into saw into had, then is into was, and was into had been. This is how, verbs, they change. The third change we saw that is adjectives and adverbs. All like, time adverbs, for example, place adverbs, for example, they change. We studied that now will be into then, today will be into that day, yesterday will be into previous day, tomorrow, into next day. So this is how, now into, this year will be into that year. So this is how, we will be changing our, time, stuff. So these three are major changes, which of course we introduce. in case of interrogatives, a little more complicated interrogatives are, and we have seen that there are three types of interrogatives: auxiliary verb interrogative, WH interrogative, and modal interrogatives. In the case of auxiliary verb, what we have seen is, or studied is, that verb changes, pronoun changes, time signifiers, of course, they change the same way. But at the place of that, we use if or whether. And after if or whether, the pattern of the sentence will be simple, not interrogative. I mean, subject then will become first, verb second, and the remaining things, third. This is something very, very important. Don't make this mistake that after, if or whether or WH, you still keep the sentence structure in interrogative form. That would be a serious, serious mistake. After if or whether, simple. Subject, verb first, verb second. And then we see WH, simple. In WH, we don't use that or if or whether. No introducer is required. Very simply, remove commas, put the two parts together, and change the interrogative structure into simple one. Same is true to modal interrogatives, where again, no introducer is required. Simply remove the commas, put two together, and of course, verbs, time signifiers, and pronouns, accordingly will be changed. The last two things which we discussed were, changing commands into, indirect speeches. And over there we saw that the possibility is, let's say, three. Number one, you can use should or ought to. I mean, if the sentence is, help them, so when you change help them into indirect, so you can use should help, or ought to help, or you can use infinitive verb, like to help, like he asked me to help. And the third one is the use of let. So this is, how we change commands into, indirect speech. And the last one was how to change exclamations into indirect speech. And over there we use exclaimed. If it's joyousness, we go for exclaimed with joy. If it's sorrow, exclaimed with sorrow. And, remaining changes, of course, will be accordingly. I hope you understood today's lecture, which was reported speech. I know that this is little more complicated. I mean, it's a lot of confusing stuff inside. But of course, you need little more study. You need little more practice, okay? And then, of course, your concepts will be clear, and you will be rather more comfortable, in doing stuff. With this, thank you very much, and see you in my next class. And over there, we'll talk about grammatical sentence, some more, issues of verbs, pronouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Till then, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.